Today, I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans.
The free speech war is the only war that really matters. And Hillary Clinton has for some time been saying that we need control over social media. This is how I believe it works. They establish a principle like we need control over social media. Then they reverse engineer how to get control over social media. Like Elon Musk recently said of Stalin's torturer in chief, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. If you want to get rid of an opponent, you have to say, how are we going to get rid of that vocal opponent? What could we say to bring down that vocal opponent? So they've decided that one way to get rid of all vocal opponents will be able to assert mass control over social media. Trump means that they're not going to be able to do that. And when I say they, I mean a set of globalist interests, groups that are transcendent of national democracies and institutions within national democracies that are able to bypass, transcend, transgress, and overwrite the transition of administrations. That now is under threat, I would say, in your country. It's not under threat in mine. It's advancing apace in countries that still have centrist politicians and leaders in control. Let's have a look at Hillary Clinton openly declaring that what they need is control over social media and then let's have a look at Trump's new plan to assure and ensure free speech.
If the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
Real harm like democracy. Remember, during the pandemic, we were told that if they couldn't control social media, people would openly report adverse injuries from vaccines. People might openly ask questions about whether or not a vaccine was right for them. For example, pregnant women might say, should I be taking this if I'm pregnant? Young men might say, if I've got a good immune system, should I take this if there is indeed a risk of myocarditis? It seems now that those were legitimate questions, as well as questions like, do you think that Pfizer's profit imperative might be overwriting their medical integrity? All legitimate questions, and all questions that, if this can be believed, and I'm talking about Trump's claim that he's going to assure free speech, will now be able to be publicly and rigorously asked and will have to be answered.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple. Just like dominoes, one by one, they'll go down.
Just like dominoes? How do dominoes fall? One by one.
That's why today I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans. And reclaim is a very important word in this case because they've taken it away. In recent weeks, bombshell reports have confirmed that a sinister group of deep state bureaucrats, Silicon Valley tyrants, left-wing activists, and depraved corporate news media have been conspiring to manipulate and silence the American people. They have collaborated to suppress vital information on everything from elections to public health. The censorship cartel must be dismantled and destroyed, and it must happen immediately. And here's my plan.
This is something I've got personal experiences of. I can tell you names of groups that worked with the government in my country during the time that I was attacked last year and are now working with, or were working with, the Biden administration in the build up to the election. That is a very real threat. That's why I'm no longer subject to the Trump derangement that a lot of people that I still consider friends and allies within media are still beleaguered by and overwhelmed by, because I've had personal experience of some of the things that he's describing. I know that it's true. I know that in the UK, government ministers in alliance with AI groups that control, de-amplify messaging, populate your chat with bots, make outrageous allegations, ally with media groups. That's a reality. So the nefarious media interests he's talking about, I know that's true. I've experienced it. Thankfully, you know it as well.
First, within hours of my inauguration, I will sign an executive order banning any federal department or agency from colluding with any organization, business, or person to censor, limit, categorize, or impede the lawful speech of American citizens. I will then ban federal money from being used to label domestic speech as mis or disinformation.
That's pretty good, because surely that's going to mean the many vocal opponents of Donald Trump, let's face it, there are a lot of them. There are protests in New York now, people saying this is not my America and stuff, Hollywood stars. They'll be able to protest freely. That's why I think it's vital that you have principles like free speech. Then whoever's president of the United States, Kamala Harris, you might like, or Donald Trump, you might not like, the principle of free speech is there so you can protest. Whatever your religious beliefs are, whether you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or an atheist, you'll be able to freely pursue your right to worship. If you have principles that you adhere to that are explicit in the American Constitution, the right to pursue happiness, like those kind of ideas are really important and valuable. And a social democracy that flows into authoritarianism no longer has the legitimacy that it's set off with. The idea that we need to take more power in order to protect you, that's the sort of molecular structure of feudalism. Give us your taxes and we'll protect you from raiding barbarians. That's what sort of like pre-democratic, or at least in Europe, pre-democratic countries were founded upon. The idea that if you give us your money, we'll stop the marauders. Well, now the marauders are controlling information online. They want absolute control of your body and your mind and your heart, and they're willing to create barbarians in order to legitimize their authority.
Let's be honest, most K-Cup pods are serving you mouldy, pesticide-laden rubbish. Chains like Dunkin', they're stinking the place out with their stale coffee and expecting you to say cheers. 1775 Coffee makes sure you don't have to drink a chemical soup when you want a caffeine lift. 1775 Coffee steps in to slap the mediocrity right out of the competition. Their K-Cup pods are filled with single origin, high-altitude beans, hand-picked by people who know what flavour actually is. It's coffee that will slap your brain fast awake. Faster, in fact, than a government scandal. Who doesn't need an injection of this new caffeine inflection? Kamala Biden? Get this stuff down here. You've got a choice of medium roast, dark roast and mushroom blend. Yeah, actual mushrooms like lion's mane and reishi to boost your brain power as well as giving you an immediate lift. Because let's be honest, if your coffee isn't strong enough to overthrow a small government, what's the point? This coffee is for people who don't want a participation trophy. This is coffee for winners. Go to 1775coffee.com, grab your 24-pack and tell Corporate Coffee to take a hike. That's go to 1775coffee.com, grab your 24-pack and tell Corporate Coffee to take a hike. Caffeine that will help you overthrow the powerful.
And I will begin the process of identifying and firing every federal bureaucrat who has engaged in domestic censorship, directly or indirectly, whether they are the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Health, Human Services, the FBI, the DOJ, no matter who they are. Second, I will order the Department of Justice to investigate all parties involved in the new online censorship regime, which is absolutely destructive and terrible, and to aggressively prosecute any and all crimes identified. These include possible violations of federal civil rights law, campaign finance laws, federal election law, securities law, and antitrust laws, the Hatch Act.
That's brilliant. In a sense, is that not a continuation of what Julian Assange revealed, of what Edward Snowden is exiled for, when we were participating in censorship industrial complex events with Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi that flew out of the Twitter files when it was revealed indeed that the FBI and CIA and other government agencies had infiltrated social media, not just Twitter, but other groups as well, Meta, Alphabet, all of them, in order to debunk, pre-bunk, rebunk, unbunk stories to create news cycles that were beneficial to their agenda. Isn't it important and significant that that's ended? Whatever your perspective is on the outcome of this election, that's a principle that you can rely on.
And a host of other potential criminal, civil, regulatory, and constitutional offenses. To assist in these efforts, I am urging House Republicans to immediately send preservation letters, and we have to do this right now, to the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, and every Silicon Valley tech giant ordering them not to destroy evidence of censorship. Third, upon my inauguration as president, I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk revising Section 230 to get big online platforms out of censorship business. From now on, digital platforms should only qualify for immunity protection under Section 230 if they meet high standards of neutrality, transparency, fairness, and non-discrimination. We should require these platforms to increase their efforts to take down unlawful content such as child exploitation and promoting terrorism, while dramatically curtailing their power to arbitrarily restrict lawful speech.
Of course, the protection of the vulnerable is vital. Of course, keeping an eye on information that might have, might pertain to terror threats seems significant, and the kind of intelligence and espionage that's always existed, or certainly for as long as there have been states and governments. What I reckon I'm interested in is the mass management of information and how media organizations are able to bypass laws. I'll be very interested to see how this affects events in the UK. Media companies cooperating with and collaborating with government agencies or government-funded groups like Logically AI and CrispTech, how those groups that have relationships with people like Mark Lancaster and Baroness Caroline Dinenage. It'll be just so interesting to see how this plays out on an international scale, because you know that they're in the service of the kind of organizations and corporations that are running scared now at the possibility that government is being revamped and that a reckoning is being undertaken. And I reckon that many of the people that oppose Donald Trump and speak negatively about him are in one way or another, perhaps unconsciously, advocating for sets of institutional interests that they don't really understand. They can't understand how Moderna and Pfizer spend their money, how the military-industrial complex spend their money, the kind of CIA carve-outs that are set up in all sorts of very, very surprising places. I've seen Freedom of Information Act information myself. This is so extraordinarily revelatory when it comes to how these things truly run. So it's what I would say is, like people say, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Well, surely now these big tech organizations will be grateful that there are new principles and new values that aren't that new. They're enshrined in the Constitution. Free speech, the right to communicate openly, that the state doesn't have a paternal and authoritarian relationship with the citizenry, but a position of service. That seems to me like a restoration of a kind of order. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and chat? If you're watching us on Rumble right now, subscribe, give us a like, get involved in the conversation. If you're not an Awakened Wonder yet, become an Awakened Wonder so you can join us for the conversations we have every week live on Break Bread.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.